Salutations, gentle viewers. This is George from Ireland. I'm in front of the statue of Eros here in London, at Piccadilly. Piccadilly Circus, so called because there used to be a roundabout, not because there was a circus with acrobats or lion tamers and so forth. This statue of Eros is nothing to do with eroticism, and there's a legend inscribed on the base of this statue, and I think precious few people have ever bothered to peruse it. So this statue is dedicated to the 10th Earl of Shaftesbury. Anthony Ashley Cooper was his name, better known as the poor man's Earl. So Earl is a noble title, of course. He was born in 1801, and he was called to his reward in 1885. He was a politician. Of course, he got into the House of Lords ex officio by virtue of his hereditary title. Hereditaries had the right to sit in the British Parliament until 1999. Still a few of them there. Anyway, so he was very well got. But despite being highborn, he was a paternalist, and he felt duty-bound to assist the lower orders. And he realized that many people were living in poverty. Not only were their dwelling places the most ghastly hovels, they weren't guaranteed regular employment, their wages were very low, they were living just above the grave in some cases, there was high child mortality, there was poor sanitation. A lot of this was avoidable, and he disliked children having to go into full-time employment as soon as they could work. They were toiling all the hours that the Lord made, with no time for recreation or education. Some of them had never even heard of Jesus Christ, which he thought was a screaming scandal. So he wanted to do things like bring in the 10 hours work. People don't have to work over 10 hours, that women and children would be banned from working in coal mines and so on. Now, some people believe the freedom of contract theory. You were free to sell your labour for whatever price you could command, and employers could pay as little as they wanted to, and could make you work in filthy, dangerous conditions, very long hours, and that was it. Employers beating their workers, well, that was absolutely fine. And if an employee broke a contract, it was a criminal matter. Whereas if the employer broke it, it was a civil matter. Anyway, Lord Shaftesbury thought this was unacceptable, and he was constantly speechifying about this in Parliament, making sure that royal commissions were impanelled, exposing the abusive conditions under which people laboured. And you can imagine that certain employers who really cared about profit and loss and nothing else fought very hard against this, saying no, this will drive up labour costs, it'll ruin us, it's uncompetitive, other countries will get our markets and things like that, it'll make our goods and services more expensive. And so all these sort of economic arguments were advanced against it. They couldn't really come up with humanitarian ones. I suppose they say it's better to be exploited than not exploited because then you don't have a job. But gradually he was able to improve working conditions, hours, make sure that more children got to go to school. Child labour was not controversial in those days. Remember, it's only the 1870s, the Forced Education Act, the WE Forster brought in schooling for all children until the age of 12. That was publicly funded. Unless, of course, you can homeschool, prove that you can provide your child a decent education at home. So that was 1872, if memory serves. And obviously the school leaving age has been raised to 14, to 15, to 16, now to 18. So that is the Earl of Shaftesbury, who was a highly controversial figure at the time, and he was a fervent Christian, a communicant of the Church of England, and indeed it was his religious faith which partly inspired him to show compassion for the needy, and he thought that he had to help those less fortunate themselves. Now, some self-made businessmen were not troubled by such a conscience, and they had no qualms about pushing the weak to the wall and exploiting people, almost as though the word and the concept don't exist, because it was just all icy cold calculation for them. What's going to make me the most filthy lucre? So this is a spot where tourists gather, and there are often street performances, but it's being a fairly dismal day. There are not many tourists around, and there are no street acts yet. Famously, Billy Connolly once danced around here in the Buff. Why on earth do they put up Eros when it's really about agape, about self-sacrificial love? So that is the monument to the Earl of Shaftesbury.